What's going on, everybody? Jeff C. back. This time I got something a little different. I'm gonna be maybe expanding the way I do things here on the channel, and so I do have a recent read that I want to talk to you guys about, but it's also part of a list, and these are 7 books that I think it would be really good not only for younger folks to read, but also to own and perhaps reread as they go through their life. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. 7 books I think everybody, in some way or form could probably benefit, but especially if you're a little younger. These are things I wish I would have read when I was younger, though not all of them were around then. So yeah, so let's get into it. All right, so the first book that I want to talk about is Haroun and the Sea of Stories by Salman Rushdie. I started off with this one because it's the book I most recently finished, and I really enjoyed this. I am becoming a very big fan of Salman Rushdie. I've said this before in my knife review that you can really tell that he has a very deep literary knowledge, and it shows in his writing. He's able to just turn a phrase, and I love that ability in an author. He's also able to keep the story very simple and concise, and those are things that I really value in a work. And so in this story, you basically have Haroun, who is this whole story seems to take place in India, which is where Rushdie was born. And so this is a story about Haroun, whose father is kind of a local storyteller, and then all of a sudden one day he kind of just can't tell stories. And so Haroun sets out to figure out why. He ends up going to a magical land where there is an entire sea that all the stories that are told kind of originate from. There's some really good imagery that Rushdie is able to portray. I got the image of like a brain and like a neuron network when the sea is described. The sea is like kind of simultaneously the source of all stories, and the same hole where the stories go to get to people is the same hole that new ideas flow from into the sea. So it's kind of cool how that works. You have a main protagonist here who's trying to stop stories from being told, and he does this by trying to poison the sea. And one thing that I thought was very interesting is that the protagonist, he's the leader, and he has all these minions that kind of carry out his work, and his thing is that he wants them all to be very quiet. He does not want them to speak a word. And that's his ultimate goal, is to have everybody silenced. And it's kind of funny. It just made me think of like how now, especially in the United States, whereas before you would go to restaurants and such and you would see everybody having conversation, and I'm sure a part of that was some stories that were told, and now you just see people kind of staring at their phones, entire families, and they're not talking to each other. And we're not talking to each other face to face as much in this society now. So it's kind of an interesting parallel, and this book's, I believe, 35 years old. So I thought that was really good. I think this is I'm a big fan of Rushdie's work, and so, but this is simple enough. Like I said, if you can give this book to a 11, 12, 13-year-old, and I think they could get it, especially if there's somebody who's already been kind of reading. And so, yeah, again, Haroun in the Sea of Stories, Salman Rushdie. I love that cover too. Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, so check it out. That's book number 1. All right, the next book that I have here is very thin. This is Who Moved My Cheese by Dr. Spencer Johnson. And another really cool book, very easy to read. The language is simple. the lessons are invaluable. Basically, if you're gonna go through life, not everything's gonna go the way you want it or the way you plan it. Matter of fact, more often than not, that's gonna be the case. And I think this is just an amazing lesson to get taught early, and to really, and also you can read this over and over, as things go. You get to a professional and you're doing whatever you're doing for work, and then you find out that things aren't going to always go the way you plan, and being able to pivot, that's a really good skill. It does give you like a good framework for adaptability, and that's a way to anticipate change, a way to enjoy change and be ready to change quickly again and again. It says that in the bold type there on the back. And so, and again, like I said, it's short enough. You could read this, you could probably have a kid read this at the end of every summer before they start the next school year, and it probably wouldn't hurt. So that is Who Moved My Cheese, Dr. Spencer Johnson, right? Yeah, Spencer Johnson. Yeah, so that is book number 2. These next 2 books I know that I have read, but boy, it's been so long, I cannot really go into details. I did just kind of do a little online scoping around, and just to make sure that, like, I remember just from this next book, just the time frame that it was written. I know that this comes from a time where books tried to teach people about stuff, and it wasn't just entertainment, it was actually a lesson. In the next book, boom, Charlotte's Web. Yes, by, what is it, E.B. White. Yes, that is true. Who remembers watching the cartoon? I certainly do. It's just, I'll read the back here. A tale of how a little girl named Fern, with the help of her friendly spider, saved her pig Wilbur from the usual fate of nice fat little pigs. And so, yeah, what you can really expect, you can expect to learn like empathy, kindness, friendship, mortality. Those are all good lessons to be taught, as early as you can. I have kind of just perused it, and I remember I had to be, and it's kind of weird because this book and the next book, I'm like, I think it was in like middle school, early middle school when I read this. And so, yeah, but yes, I just kind of perusing back through it. The writing is very simple. And so I think it's really important to have there's like a strong emotional bonds presented here in simplistic display. And so that's another rare skill, is again to be able to keep it simple but powerful. And I also read a lot of people say that as they reread it, as they get into adulthood, they kind of start to relate with other characters, or maybe even they see some of the other characters and it kind of makes them think of various folks in their life. And so, that's cool too. Yeah, I found this at a used bookstore, like a couple of bucks. So I really think it's something good to get for a young person and have them read it and have them keep it and read it throughout their life. All right, now this next book, again, I think I read it in either middle school, maybe early high school. And it's kind of funny because my wife and I were out with some good friend of ours having dinner, and her name is Cara. She mentioned it, and I kind of was like, man, I recognize the name of that story. And then I looked up, and I'm gonna put the cover here that I remember reading in whenever it was, middle school or high school. And I just remember the old man there. I was like, oh, he looks like somebody that I would have lived around when I grew up with. Seems like a cool guy. And so I remember really liking the K. This is the version I just recently got. But yeah, it's been so long. I'm just gonna kind of read the back of this for you real quick. When the freighter Philip and his mother are traveling on is torpedoed, the pair is separated and Philip is knocked unconscious. Philip wakes, his vision blurred, to discover that he is on a small raft in the middle of the Caribbean Sea. The only other castaways are an old West Indian named Timothy and a black and gray cat called Stu. Philip is initially suspicious of Timothy. He's been raised with the unfortunate attitudes of his time, but it's not long before he loses his sight entirely and the very man he doesn't trust becomes his only hope for survival. Philip and Timothy's struggle to outwit nature has captivated readers for generations. The Cay is an enduring classic about a boy who goes blind and the friendship that saves him. So yeah, The Cay. I'll be reading this pretty soon. It's thin. It's only 135 pages. Pretty big font. So I'll probably sprinkle this in amongst some of the bigger books that I have planned coming up pretty soon. And so yeah, The Cay. This will be a reread, but not quite. I don't know. Is there a word for that where it's like, you know for a fact that you've read a book, but you don't really remember much. You just know that you liked it. That's kind of how I am with anything. If I've seen a movie once, but it's been 15 years, unless something crazy happened, I'm not going to remember it, but I can remember at least how it made me feel. All right, this next book, man, it is not hyperbole when I say that I feel that every baby that is born should, in America, we're given a social security number, and I also feel that they should just be also assigned a copy of this book. This is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Yes, the Roman Empire. This is the Gregory Hayes edition. This is the one that Ryan Holiday is always talking about. I've read this book all the way through, and then I kind of every once in a while I'll just pop it open and read something, because you can really just open it to wherever. It's not like it's a continuous novel. These are literally journal entries that Marcus Aurelius made, and there's so much good stuff in here about, in layman's terms, not sweating the small stuff. Marcus Aurelius also was very aware that death was close and always, there, and so anything that was kind of pressing on you, it's either you can do something about it or you cannot do something about it. And so I really think that this is something that we should give to people as young as you can. And you don't have to expect them to read it right away. And I gave both of my nephews a copy, and I just said, hey, they were 13 and I think maybe 17 at the time, or maybe like 11 and 15. And I just said, I don't require you or want you to read it right now. All that I ask is that you don't lose it, because I hope that some point in their life they'll read this book and maybe find it amongst their stuff when it's a good time for them to have it in their lives. And so I'm just gonna read one. Literally, you can see, I put here, and then I put exclamation points here, and then over on this page, it's I've just, everywhere there's just stuff. This is all really good. So I'll just read. I'll just open it up to this page here. I know I got this bookmark there, but this is let me just read this entry real quick. Remember how long you've been putting this off, how many extensions the gods gave you and you didn't use them. At some point you have to recognize that what world it is that you belong to, what power rules it, and from what source you spring, that there is a limit to the time assigned you, and if you don't use it to free yourself, it will be gone and will never return. So yeah, Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. This is my desert island book. Honestly, if I found myself just stranded on a desert island, this would be the one book that I would want to have with me, and I'd probably just, read it over and over again and just try to use the time to the best of my ability. So yeah, Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. Get it for yourself. Get it for your kids. Next is a book that I read about 6 years ago. I first heard it. I heard of this author listening to a podcast with Ari Shafir. This book is called Vagabonding. It is by Rolf Potts. Ultimately, it is an uncommon guide to the art of long-term world travel. Now, the reason I'm including this list is because I think that the lessons that are taught in this book gives the reader a chance to do something that is just a huge skill in life, and that is apply a lesson learned in one area to a totally separate area, and so you read something like Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Yeah, it's about motorcycle maintenance, but if you can use those lessons when you're, having some hardships in your job or somewhere else, then that's wisdom. And so that's really what I like about this. As far as the travel component, there's some really cool stuff there. And he talks about like when you're traveling the world, but I really feel like you can even use this just when you're in your own home city. I've lived in Houston, Texas my whole life, and there's stuff in here that's, you know, really cool. And one of the things that he says, Rolf Potts says in Vagabonding, is like, if it's your first time going to a city, let's say you're going to Paris for the first time, right? Like, yeah, go see the Eiffel Tower. You know, like, don't be dumb. Just, yeah, go. You want to see the stuff. It's the Eiffel Tower. It's the reason it's known. You know, it's the reason it's been gawked at for decades. You know, go see the Arc de Triomphe. You know, all that stuff. But if you're going back to Paris and you're already doing that, don't go to the Eiffel Tower again. Like, go to the places where Parisians go and really get a sense of what being in the city is like for the people who are there every day, you know. And so it's kind of cool to, even in Houston, you know, like when I think of like where would I send somebody visiting to Houston for the first time, I'd probably say like go see the Astrodome, which at least you can see it from the outside. Go see NASA, you know, stuff like that. But now, I just use this to remind myself, not that I think about this book now, but I just like, you know, my wife and I, we really are trying to see more of the places and go to different restaurants. We, you know, we got like a bank of like 20, 25 restaurants that we eat, and now we're like, no, let's go to one we haven't ever been to. And so, yeah, I just think there's a lot of cool stuff. Like, literally you can use this for travel, but also you can use it for life. Vagabonding, Rolf Potts. Check it out. Last is a book. My wife and I went to Boston recently, and I went to the Berklee College of Music bookstore and just to look at what they have, and I saw this book there. I haven't read it yet, but again, this is another book that is kind of specific to an idea, but the lessons contained in it can be applied to anything in life. That is Effortless Mastery by Kenny Werner. And yeah, I'm gonna read the back here for you. Kenny Werner is an accomplished pianist who began performing at age 4 and by age 11 had appeared on television. While at the Manhattan School of Music, he became restless with his musical direction and began to explore jazz as a new means of creativity and expression. Along his journey, he was inspired by the masters of the craft to rethink not only the technical aspects of creativity, but also the spiritual aspects. Effortless Mastery is not only an account of that full journey, but also an insightful guide for all those wishing to remove their own barriers to creativity in life and the arts. While Mr. Werner happens to be a musician, the concepts presented here are applicable to every profession, aspiration, or lifestyle where there is a need for free-flowing, effortless thinking. If you've constantly pointed to other players and thought that they possess something you didn't, or if you've practiced for years and never really improved, or if you've always played great but your music lacks depth and meaning for you, read on. So yeah, Effortless Mastery by Kenny Werner helps younger people understand that being good at something should not destroy the joy of doing it. And yeah, sometimes you get caught up, you got to go through the mundane things of, you know, with music, learning scales, or, you know, just sitting there practicing a piece over and over again, and that can take the joy out of it for some people. And so this can help you not experience that. I also have heard that this, becomes valuable during adulthood when like pressure and comparison begin affecting like creativity and confidence. And so, yeah, I'll be reading this pretty soon. This is, again, Effortless Mastery. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it might be, you know, for somebody who's young teen. Anyway, just something I thought you guys would want to check out. Anyway, so that is 7 books that I think every young person should read and own. So let me know if you've checked out any of those books, guys. And thank you all. I'll be posting more stuff along these lines from now on. Like, I like doing the book review stuff, but I think if I can try to throw it in amongst like a list like this. So I mean, instead of me just doing a review for Haroun and the Sea of Stories, I said, what else, who is this good for, and what else do I own? These are just the books that I own that I could just find that I think are really good for young people. There's thousands of others. So have you checked out any of those? Do you want to check out any of those? Talk to me down in the comments. Please like, subscribe, follow me on Goodreads and Instagram, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Thank you. Peace.